Searchers find debris where an Egyptair crashed into the Mediterranean Sea. What we're learning about the investigation. Oklahoma lawmakers take a stand against abortion. Why they hope it leads to overturning Roe v. Wade. Plus, how states are taking the lead in pro-life legislation. And tracking the spread of Zika, surprising news in the number of pregnant women affected. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, May 20th, 2016. The White House on high alert this afternoon. Secret Service shot a man brandishing a gun at the White House. The motive is not known. The president was not at the White House at the time of the incident. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis sends his condolences to Egyptians following the crash of Flight 804. The Vatican says the Pope is praying for those victims, their relatives, and everyone involved in search and rescue efforts. Egyptian forces involved in the search for missing Egyptair Flight 804 say they've made a grim discovery in the Mediterranean, some 180 miles north of the coastal city of Alexandria. The military says they've found parts of the Airbus A320 as well as passenger belongings. The plane disappeared in the middle of the night Wednesday with 66 people on board. It departed from Paris en route to the Egyptian capital of Cairo. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said he mourns the victims on board the Egyptair flight who were killed after the plane crashed. An Egyptair passenger says everyone is in mourning.
Well, we feel very, very bad for the lives that we have lost, whether Egyptian or other nationalities. All our feelings, I believe, should go to the people that we have lost and their families.
An official cause has not been determined. Some U.S. officials say early signs point to a terrorist attack.
But the first question I have is who did it and what kind of capability do they bring to the fight?
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Abortion supporters in Oklahoma vow to fight a pending bill that could send abortion doctors to jail. Pro-life supporters welcome the challenge. They hope the bill will lead to an abortion ban across the country. Oklahoma's state legislature passed a bill that would essentially ban abortion, making it a felony for a doctor to perform one.
By making this change now, if a doctor also does that and commits does an abortion, then yes, that could also subject them to a felony as well.
A doctor cannot intentionally break his Hippocratic oath, intentionally try to kill that unborn child, and retain his license to practice medicine in the state of Oklahoma. So this is a different angle, but it's absolutely purely constitutional.
The bill allows for exceptions, including saving a mother's life. Supporters say it could go to the Supreme Court and overturn Roe versus Wade.
In the Dred Scott decision, which was one of the worst decisions in Supreme Court history, they said that African Americans were considered property and not people, and so the court has been inconsistent with what its definition of what a person is.
Abortion rights supporters and the State Medical Association call the bill unconstitutional. Republican Governor Mary Fallin has until Wednesday to decide if she'll sign it. That's just one of the many pro-life bills passed in Oklahoma. 8 other state measures have been challenged in court over the past 5 years. Jason Calvi says these bills are part of a growing wave across the country. Jason.
Lauren, it's been a big week for pro-life victories in the states. Louisiana's legislature passed a ban on dismemberment abortions, and South Carolina's legislature passed a ban on most abortions after 19 weeks of pregnancy. It's part of a growing wave across the country. Here, take a look at the states that ban abortions based on when supporters say the baby can feel pain around 20 weeks of pregnancy.
National Right to Life Executive Director David Osteen says the new laws are important.
It'll protect babies that feel pain from being painfully aborted, and it'll protect babies from being barbarically torn apart. But it also serves to educate the public about what abortion really is.
National Right to Life's 2012 education effort included 10 million letters, 42,000 radio ads, and 4 million phone calls. This year, they're focusing on tough Senate races in Florida, North Carolina, New Hampshire, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nevada.
It's going to be a close election. Most of these races are where pro-life senators are being challenged because more pro-life senators are up this year than pro-abortion senators by far.
Gallup's yearly abortion poll out this week finds 23% of pro-lifers say a candidate must share their views on abortion, while 17% of pro-choicers say their candidate has to share their abortion view.
Majority of people who vote on the basis of abortion vote for pro-life candidates. We've seen that in election after election after election.
So Osteen says it helps pro-life candidates to talk about abortion.
Sometimes the pro-life candidate wants to just state that they're pro-life and get off the issue. They need to point out the extreme position of the pro-abortion candidates because they are way out of the mainstream.
The new Gallup annual abortion poll finds 6 out of 10 pro-lifers are not familiar with Trump's abortion views. The poll also finds the country is almost evenly split on abortion. 47% say they're pro-choice, while 46% say they're pro-life.
And a warning from Pope Francis, bishops must consult with the Vatican before approving new would-be religious orders or face consequences. The Vatican wants to make sure the orders meet specific criteria, including a unique charism or founding spirit. One of the world's most holy sites is getting a makeover. Workers are beginning to project to restore the tomb of Jesus inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That's the place where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. It's considered the biggest renovation in almost 200 years. Workers plan to repair, reinforce, and conserve the structure, but pilgrims will still be able to visit the site while work is underway. 52-year-old Reverend Francesco Patton takes over as the head of the Catholic Church's properties in the Holy Land. The Italian priest says he's committed to building bridges, dialogue, and peace with Israelis and Palestinians. Mounting tensions between Venezuela's government and political opponents force a Vatican envoy to cancel his trip. Opponents want to oust the Venezuelan president in the midst of food, medical, and electricity shortages. Archbishop Paul Gallagher planned to participate in the consecration of a bishop. The Vatican says the Holy See did not cancel the trip, implying that Venezuela may have asked him not to come. The Archbishop's visit was seen as a chance to help defuse the crisis. And every week in an election year is a busy one. This one is no different. To delve into this week's top headlines, we're joined tonight by Melinda Hennenberger, Editor-in-Chief at Roll Call, and Bob Cusack, Editor-in-Chief of The Hill. Welcome to the program again. Thank you both for joining us. Thanks. What do you make of Donald Trump's list of Supreme Court nominees, Bob?
Well, it's soothing the right, who obviously the right has been concerned about Donald Trump, and these 11 scholars are conservative. It got a good reaction from the base. It was interesting, though, who was not on the list. Senator Ted Cruz, who some Republicans, he can be kind of a troublemaker in the Senate. So if
Really?
there is a President Trump, maybe you put him on the high court. And also Senator Mike Lee was not on the list. But
although his brother was.
His brother was, exactly. So I think this was a good way of appeasing the right, especially because, remember, there's still some rumblings of a third-party conservative candidate. I think Trump released this to make sure, okay, listen, I'll win some points with the right, so maybe that effort just goes away. And it seems like it's sputtering.
Melinda, the New York Times had a scathing report on Donald Trump and his treatment of women. Did it hurt him?
I don't think so. I was a little bit surprised, honestly, that there wasn't more new information in the report. I think there was really only one anecdote I had not heard before. So I think that he does have an issue with women voters for sure. But I'm not sure that report in particular broke any new ground.
And even a woman recanted or said that she wasn't treated quite well by the Times reporters, and the Times said we reported her story accurately.
I'm sure one might assume that she might have been under some pressure.
From the Trump campaign?
Change. Yes.
And he also took a jab at Hillary, saying she may want to keep her eye on Bill. What do you two make of that, Bob?
Well, he's gone after Bill Clinton very hard, and I think that's going to be part of his strategy. But as Melinda says, I mean, his numbers among women, not good, especially married women. So I think that everything he's saying about Bill Clinton is aimed at improving his numbers, trying to get the focus off of him and onto Bill Clinton's controversial past.
But Hillary doesn't really seem to take a bite when it comes to those things, right?
She doesn't. We had a column I found really interesting from Matt Lewis, arguing that even though it would seem to make no sense for Donald Trump to be bringing up Bill Clinton's past with women, given his own colorful history with women, maybe even in the not-so-distant past, but Matt feels that he may be trying to get Hillary off script, that he had so much success during the primaries in going after Ted Cruz's wife, Ted Cruz's father. That's when Ted Cruz really got so riled up, lost his temper, maybe didn't handle it as when our loved one is attacked.
Right.
We can react in some ways that are not
Well,
scripted,
it's
but I see Hillary sticking to. I think it would take more than an attack on her husband
Right,
to get her off
going.
script.
Well, a lot of tension was on Nevada's state convention. There was violence from Sanders supporters. Did the DNC handle it the right way?
Well, the Sanders supporters are very upset, and they're upset specifically at Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who heads the DNC. And so that's going to be a very difficult, I think, obstacle, because the party wants to unify. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a longtime Hillary Clinton supporter, and she supported Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama. So I think this is going to be tense, at least for the next several weeks, because I think Bernie Sanders is going to be asking a lot in the negotiations to get what he wants in order to back Hillary Clinton.
Well, we could sit here and talk all day, couldn't we? But we have to go. Bob Cusack, thank you so much. Melinda Hendenberger.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, growing concern about the Zika virus, how it's affecting pregnant women and Olympic athletes. And social media meeting of the minds. We'll talk to one conservative who questioned the founder of Facebook. Pope Francis celebrates Mass in honor of couples celebrating their silver and golden wedding anniversaries. During this morning's Santa Marta Mass, the Pope talked about the harmony of creation and how God made men and women to join into one flesh. He says no one should separate what God has joined. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. As the battle on Capitol Hill for money to fund the Zika virus epidemic rages, the number of pregnant women in the U.S. infected triples. There are now 157 pregnant women across the country infected with Zika, up from 48 last week. Now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is now counting all women who test positive for Zika. The CDC had counted women who suffered symptoms, in part based on the possibility of false positive tests. The president calls on Congress to quickly approve funding to fight the Zika virus, but Republicans disagree on how much money should be spent.
Certainly, this has to get done over the course of the next several weeks in order for us to be able to provide confidence to the American people that we're handling this piece of business.
The U.S. swim team changes their training camp location from Puerto Rico to Atlanta, Georgia, over the Zika virus. Concerns in a letter to athletes and coaches. The nation's team director says health experts believe they'd be highly exposed to the Zika virus in Puerto Rico. There are no plans for the U.S. team to bail on the Summer Olympic Games in Brazil. Doug Eldridge is a sports agent and managing partner of DLE Agency. Doug, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, this is a big issue. A lot of your clients are Olympic athletes. How concerned are you and they about this virus?
At a minimum, they're very aware of it, because what's not in dispute is the severity of the illness. That part isn't in dispute. I think the ambiguity comes in the probability of contracting and transmitting it. And in so many ways, that uncertainty creates even greater fear. But if there's anything that they are, it's absolutely informed. We were talking to one of our Olympic swimmers this morning just about this, and she was referencing CDC statistics, so they're certainly on top of it in cooperation with
And they're
Team
aware
USA.
of their risks, I would
Absolutely.
understand. This week, the International Olympic Committee president says there will be, quote, zero tolerance policy when it comes to doping. Is this a game changer?
100% game changer.
Why?
Thomas Bach, the president, said this because for the first time ever, really, right, post-East German sports, we're looking at potentially a statewide run doping scandal. Historically, we had individual athletes who were punished. A couple of months ago, for the first time, we had the proposition of an entire NGB, national governing body, being sanctioned, meaning the entire Russian track and field federation not being able to compete in Rio. Now that's notched 2 levels higher, and the discussion shifts to all of Russian athletes in every sport, irrespective of their history, potentially being sanctioned and excluded from the game. So it is an absolute game changer.
The New York Times front page today had a piece, it was Juliet McCurr, saying that it's unlikely that viewers are not going to watch the Olympics because of a doping scandal. Is that true?
I couldn't agree more. Juliet, first of all, as a journalist, is fantastic. Second of all, her opinion is spot on. You got to remember the one unique thing about the Olympics is that athletes aren't competing for a team or a logo. The Redskins or the Ravens or the 49ers or the Wizards, their team logo is Team USA. and their fan base is 300 million strong. You're not cheering for your team. In so many ways, you're cheering for your country. And in that regard, there's nothing on point, on par, or on scale with the Olympic Games. I don't think for a second that we're going to see these games halted. That doesn't mean that the athletes aren't going to execute caution along the way, but the Olympic Games will go on as planned.
Thank you very much. Doug Eldridge, managing partner of the DLE agency. Pope Francis has a message for soccer players taking part in this weekend's Italian Championship. He wants them to display good judgment on and off the field. The Pope, a big football fan, met today with members of Italy's AC Milan team and Juventus team. Vatican Radio says he encouraged them to serve as role models by showing respect, mutual respect, understanding, and forgiveness. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg met with a group of 17 conservative journalists this week. The discussion was called after a report accused the social media site of suppressing conservative views. In a Facebook post after the meeting, Zuckerberg didn't directly respond to the allegations, but acknowledged many conservatives believe there's a political bias on the site. Rob Bluey is one of the conservative journalists who met with Mark Zuckerberg this week. He's the editor-in-chief of the Daily Signal. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, it's great to be with you.
What was it like meeting with Mark Zuckerberg?
Oh, it was fascinating. Massive campus that Facebook has in Menlo Park, California, and encouraging that he used the meeting as an opportunity to listen to us and not just preach his own point of view.
So you were paid your own way to go out to Menlo Park to bow down, right?
As some would say.
As some would say. Were you afraid that going there could be seen as a publicity stunt for Daily Signal?
Oh, absolutely. I think that all of the conservatives in the room were concerned about that, and that's why we were encouraged coming out of the meeting that they did use it as an opportunity to both explain to us, shed some transparency on how Facebook operates, but also make a commitment that they recognize that they have a problem and that they need to do a better job moving forward.
That wasn't their first response, by the way, to admit that they had a problem, right?
Right.
With suppressing conservative news.
Right. Well, so they're conducting an internal investigation, and we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, Senator John Thune is asking some questions in the Senate Commerce Committee of Facebook, so they take this seriously. At the same time, I think there are some conservatives who didn't go to the meeting. And
like Matt Schlapp from ACLU, who runs CPAC.
That's correct. Matt Schlapp is...
That was a bunch of acronyms. Maybe we should explain.
Yes.
The American Conservative Union.
The American Conservative Union, and CPAC is a large conference, and Matt Schlapp has voiced some concerns because Facebook has a overwhelming population of liberals, at least if you look at their political donations. Their workforce tends to skew to the left. And are they really in the best position to determine what conservative content is if they don't have the people in place at Facebook to make those decisions? Conservative
personality Glenn Beck says the meeting felt like the Salem witch trial. Do you agree? And what was the backlash against Facebook?
Well, Beck is concerned that some conservatives raise this point of a diverse workforce and Facebook needing to go out and hire more conservatives. I don't think he felt that conservatives should be dictating to Facebook how they run their business. And so that was one of the concerns that he had. Now, I don't think that we're asking Facebook to take the directive from the government. In fact, there were several of us who made the point that Facebook should welcome the conservative point of view because we believe in free speech. We also don't want government meddling in the private affairs of businesses. So from that respect, I think that Glenn Beck and I might see slightly differently how the outcome of the meeting was.
Okay. Rob Bluey, editor of the Daily Signal, thank you so much for joining us. Up next, using social media to spread the faith. Can it be taken too far? And 3D printing, how students in Rome are using technology to help people in Africa. The firm commitment for human rights springs from an awareness of the unique and supreme value of each person. That's a tweet from Pope Francis today. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Pope Francis has been named the most influential world leader on Twitter. The Holy Father is just one of many Catholics trying to make a difference using the World Wide Web. Earlier today, Catherine Zeltner spoke with the man behind Bishop Robert Barron's online outreach.
Brandon Vaught is a Catholic blogger and content director for Word on Fire Catholic Ministries. He joins us now from Orlando, Florida. Brandon, from Pope Francis's tweets to your own ministry, why should Catholics be engaged in social media?
Well, because as each of the last few popes have acknowledged that these social media tools are gifts from God. They're opportunities to connect with people who we otherwise would never reach, people who aren't darkening the doors of our parishes, who aren't showing up to our institutions, but who, thanks to social media, we have direct access to in order to build relationships, to catechize, and to evangelize.
So for everyday Catholics who may want to evangelize with their own Facebook page or Twitter account, what tips would you give them?
Sure, I think the simplest thing to do is just share great Catholic content. You don't have to be, you don't have to go overboard with it. So don't post 100 Catholic articles and videos a day, but maybe once a day you decide to share a good article or video from a place like EWTN or Catholic Answers or Word on Fire. This is a simple way to spread the Catholic message without being overbearing and without feeling like you yourself have to communicate the truths.
And can you give an example of what it could be to be overbearing on your social media account?
Sure. I got several friends who are big devotees of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I love Our Lady of Guadalupe, but sometimes they post maybe 10 or 20 pictures of Our Lady with different quotes and graphics on Facebook. And while I can appreciate that, I sometimes think, what would somebody think who hasn't been to church in many years? Or what would an atheist or agnostic think? The first thing that they would do is likely block that person on Facebook. So we need to be strategic about this. We need to share our faith, but without being overly zealous so that we turn people off completely. So there's a balance we got to find.
And you actually had a home video that recently went viral. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. A few months ago, my little son, who was 3 years old at the time, had a Mass kit, and he decided to celebrate Mass at home. And my wife and I, we filmed it on our phone and posted it on YouTube. And suddenly, within a few hours, it had tens of thousands of views already. So a lot of people told us it was really inspiring and encouraging to see young people enthusiastic about the faith. So if that's all it did, then we're happy with that.
Well, it was inspiring. Brandon, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Hard not to laugh at that video of that little boy. Anyway, students in Rome team up to help others. Mary Shovlin is going to show us now how they're turning bottle caps into prosthetic limbs for patients in Africa.
With simple bottle caps that we throw away every day, these students at Istituto Massimo are giving people in Africa a better future.
We usually throw our caps in the bin and we don't use them again. Instead, we can break them into many pieces and then melt them and make a wire like this.
That wire is used to make limbs like these. Volunteers teach the 69 students who signed up. With their help, not only are they making prosthetics, these kids from 8 to 15 years old are also making the 3D printers themselves.
This team of 20 parents that are engineers, professors from high school, university, that are technicians, but also doctors who like to do this stuff. We have lots of volunteers who help in order to do this course.
By using crowdfunding, they created Crowd for Africa to get the word out. Even big corporations like Visa and Volkswagen jumped on board.
We put our idea on the platform on internet, and we asked for a small amount of money, like 50 euros or 100 euros, to help us doing the project. And with a little help of everybody, we reached 3 times the goals that we needed.
They began last year by making drones, which they were able to present to Pope Francis. Impressed by their efforts, the Holy Father challenged them to make their next project something that could help others. This year, they went back to the Vatican to show Pope Francis their new project and were able to capture this moment when he blessed the new prosthetic hand. The students are using their knowledge to give back. Some are even making toys with the 3D printers to send to Africa. And Patrick here was nice enough to use his to do a little bit of marketing for us. In Rome, Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly.
What an uplifting story, Mary Shovlin. Thank you so much. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Follow us on Facebook and at Twitter at EWTN, and I'm at Lauren Ashburn. Good night, and God bless.